All right. Hello, families. Hopefully you can all see me.
Do we take our masks off as a reveal when we're saying our name?
Yes, that would be great. Can someone who is out in the audience just type into the chat and let us know that you can see us? Okay, I see. Hello. Perfect. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. If I share my screen, though, friends, am I still going to see you? Let's try this out.
So just remember, if you're out there, to mute.
This gives them the opportunity to get a taste to find out what they like. Choose their electric pathways.
Yeah.
I was like, what's your idea? So I just put it back on her.
So why is she emailing me now?
I am hearing someone in the background, which is making it really hard for us to hear what's going on. Are we good?
Or was it the one from the Let's Talk or whatever?
All right. Can you all see the slides? Can somebody monitor the chat for me? Karen or?
Yep, I got it, Sue.
Okay. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Parent Information Forum. We all decided to show you us in our masks as the kids will see us, but we will remove our masks for the purpose of this presentation. We'll introduce ourselves. I am Sue Balboni. I'm the principal of Memorial Elementary School.
Hi, everybody. I'm Karen Galani, principal over at Benham.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aiden McCann. I'm the principal at Brown Elementary.
Jordan, are you there?
Jordan, you're muted.
I was trying to get rid of the background noise. Hi, everyone. I'm Jordan Hoffman. I'm principal at Johnson School and our K-5 Remote Learning Academy.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephanie Wasick, principal of Lilja Elementary.
So welcome. So we wanted to take this opportunity to just give you some overview about what this year is going to look like, some of the changes that we've put into place to ensure everyone's safety. And to give you an opportunity to ask questions. So we're going to give you a little bit of presentation, and then we will go through the chat and do our best to answer all of your questions. Please know that this has been a whirlwind of a summer for us. Most of us didn't take much of a vacation because we wanted to make sure that we were getting everything into place for our little friends to join us. And at this point, we still have some questions that we are unable to answer, but we will do our very best to make sure that we get you those answers if we don't have them for you today. So here we go.
And just to note that this is being recorded today, so if you have any friends out there who weren't able to make it, we will be adding it to our newsletters that will be shared out tomorrow. The recording will be added to our newsletters. So we have a lot of, go ahead.
Along with the slide deck. So we'll be sharing everything that you're seeing here today and then the conversations that we're having.
Great. Thank you. So we have a lot of information about how we're going to be returning back to school, and hopefully you've had a chance to look at our handbooks. And for the first time ever, all of our elementary schools are going to be starting at the same time. With a lot of kids not riding the bus this year, and with reducing our population so much, we're able to do that and get everyone to school for 8:30. Our end time is going to be 1:30, but students can begin arriving at 8:20. Unfortunately, we do not have our early risers or ASAP programs, so we are not able to accept students into the building prior to 8:20. In the past, we've had breakfast, and we'll continue to have breakfast for those students who need it. We will have a separate place for them to eat somewhere on campus so that they can have that social distancing in place, and breakfast is free to any student who needs it. We will also have time for 2 snack breaks every day. They will be held outside. We'll share with you a picture of what our tents look like. So if we are having inclement weather, we can stay dry and safe, but please send your students to school with appropriate clothing for all weather types because we will be having our snacks outside. This year, we are instituting a nut-free snack rule for all classrooms. In the past, it's been certain classrooms depending on where our allergies are living, but this year we're going to make sure all classrooms are nut-free, just as another way to make sure kids are safe. In addition to our 2 snack breaks every day, we'll also be having mask breaks throughout the day. We understand that kids might not be accustomed to wearing their masks for several hours on end, and that's not our goal. We're going to give them time to take their masks off, to have a little breather, and then return into class with their masks on again. We are having recess. The recess will be structured in a slightly different way than what kids are accustomed to. We are designing games right now that'll allow us to keep kids socially distant, but also get that energy out that we know they need to burn off every day. So we are putting recess into our schedule. And back to eating and drinking, we will have kids have water breaks as well. We're going to encourage kids to take their water breaks outside as much as possible, but they can have water in the classrooms. And we do have touch-free water bubblers for kids to use to refill their water bottles throughout the day if they need to. But we recommend sending kids in with full water bottles so that just to cut down on the traffic to and from the bubblers. The part of the bubblers that would normally allow kids to drink directly from the bubblers is being disabled in all of our buildings. And then lastly, we are having bagged lunches available for students who need to have lunch taken home with them at the end of the day. We're not serving lunch on campus, but any student that needs to get lunch at school can get it before they leave. It'll be delivered to classrooms and available for students to take home at 1:30. So I think that's most of our logistics, and I'll pass it over.
So we've spent a large majority of our summer making sure that students are safe when they arrive at our schools, because safety is our #1 priority for students, far before curriculum. We want to make sure that students receive hand sanitizer upon entering the building. That might be at the doorway entrance or it might be at the classroom entrance, but when they come into school, one of the first things that we're going to ask them to do is to use hand sanitizer. They're also going to use hand sanitizer before and after snack, before and after bathroom visits, and when they're leaving for the day. We're going to make sure that we teach hand washing procedures. That's going to be reviewed with all students. That's actually the best way to make sure that germs are removed, is to wash hands with soap and water. Bathrooms will be limited to 1 student at a time. So we're developing systems so that students will, of course, be able to go to the bathroom when they need to go to the bathroom, but we're going to try and make sure that students are just in there 1 at a time. Hallways at arrival and dismissal will be just 1 way. And in certain hallways where there's at least 6 feet of distance, students are going to be asked to travel on just 1 side and stay to that side. So there may be a 2-way hallway, but those hallways are big enough to accommodate that. The hallways will also have arrows and circles for students to travel safely throughout the building, showing the direction that they should be going, so that they've got some visual reminders to help them out with that. Each of the classrooms and all of our teaching spaces are going to be sanitized each and every night. Our students are going to be assigned to the same desk each day. So when they arrive at school, they're going to be assigned a desk, and that's going to be their desk probably for the year. So students are not going to be switching desks or moving from one space to another. Desks are going to be arranged at least 6 feet apart. All of our desks have plexiglass on at least 2 sides, and they're facing the same direction. So the Board of Health has recommended that students in classrooms have masks and are 6 feet apart, and we're adding a couple layers of protection, such as plexiglass and the facing in the same direction, so that we're really minimizing any kind of transmission or the possibility of any kind of transmission. All students and staff will wear masks. Of course, as Ms. Hoffman just said earlier, there will be mask breaks. So I was speaking to a parent earlier who said, well, will they have an opportunity to take that mask off? Yes, multiple times over the course of the day, they will have an opportunity to take that mask off. In terms of masks, though, we ask that no gaiters, bandanas, or vented masks be brought in, because those masks don't have the same type of protection that the standard cloth approved mask has. So that's something that we're hoping you can pay attention to. And if for any reason a student comes in with a mask and it happens to get wet or it breaks or they need another one, we will have a supply on hand so that students will be able to get another mask.
So this slide shows just what some of our classrooms might look like. You can see in these pictures, these classrooms have all been outfitted with plexiglass. You know, it's obviously clear, and it just shows you an example of what those classrooms might look like with plexi and with desks or tables spaced 6 feet apart. These are some pictures of what school hallways might look like, just some signage around our buildings, just reminding students to wear their masks, maintain social distance. The hallway pictures kind of show our floor stickers that help space students out. But things like social distance and obviously proper mask wearing protocols will be language that students will hear and see throughout the day. This is just another example of what our exteriors might look like, changes to the exteriors of our building. This is Johnson Elementary, and it just shows some of the tents that have been put outside where students can take mask breaks on especially sunny days or in just mild inclement weather, rain or drizzle. Some parents might be wondering what they can do to help your children with this transition back to school. If you could practice hand washing with your children, just showing at least 20 seconds, whether it's teaching them a song they could sing during that time, but just reminding them of that 20-second mark for proper hand washing and just how to, you know, ensure they get between fingers and on both sides of their hands. Also, if you could help your child just practice wearing a mask for longer periods of time, there is linked right here, and this is recorded, and we'll be sharing these resources. There is a mask resource that you can click on, and it just gives some age-appropriate tips for talking about masks and kind of normalizing that with children. At the elementary age, it's really about sort of understanding the why of this and how masks can keep us safe. And it also has some pediatrician's tips for explaining coronavirus to kids, to elementary levels specifically. If you could also just practice, especially with our younger students, practice zipping jackets and tying their shoes independently, and also practice opening their snack packages or water bottles independently. The more they can do that, the more we'll be able to maintain that safe distance. So if they could practice those things and become as independent as possible prior to school. Also, if you could create a consistent schedule, for example, what time they wake up, what time they typically have lunch or go to bed during both learning weeks, both at school and at home. And that just consistent schedule across the board will help them with that routine and just the reminder that both weeks are weeks of learning. And finally, if you could designate a dedicated workspace for children to log into their remote lessons and complete their work. That'll be helpful as they transition into both their weeks of learning.
So many of you have heard and seen the emails that we are transitioning to PowerSchool. We were previously using iPass. So we're asking that every parent create a PowerSchool account. You should have received an email in order to do that. If you haven't, it's important that you contact our PowerSchool support, and there's a link to that email here. But this is where all of your demographic information will be. So nothing was transitioned over from iPass. So we have your child's name, date of birth, and your email address. We need you to go in and update all of that information so that we always know how to reach you. We need all of the contact information for anyone who is a parent, a guardian who may potentially be picking up your child. So again, if you haven't received that, please make sure you contact PowerSchool Parent Support at pssupport@natickps.org. It's also important to know that some of you I know have been trying to get support. There is a backlog of tickets requesting support, so we appreciate your patience. They will get to it. The other important information to know is that PowerSchool is where all of our alerts will live regarding health situations, if there are any guardianship situations, as well as where you will access your child's report card at reporting time. Karen, are you on this?
Thanks, Sue. So we are going to continue using Pickup Patrol at the elementary school level, and it's going to look a little bit differently this year for across the buildings, because we are all hosting a live pickup this year. So there's going to be some queuing that happens in order to connect you with your students at the end of the day. And we're going to use Pickup Patrol to help us with that process. So it's really important that when you set up this account, that you tell us what your plans are and who's going to be picking up your students. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm speaking for all schools, and I just got a message from Jordan saying not at Johnson. So sorry, Jordan. I thought I had read that in your hybrid book.
That's okay. Actually, our dismissal won't look all that different. It just will be a staggered time.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you.
So it's new for Benham. I think it's existing practice at Lilja and Memorial and maybe Brown School too. But the Pickup Patrol is going to be the app that's going to help us coordinate that pickup so that it's clear and concise, and that your kids are you're ready to receive your kids, and your kids are ready to be received in an orderly fashion. So we need your help getting that Pickup Patrol set up, and we'll be communicating more information about that next week.
Excuse me. Sorry. One other thing about Pickup Patrol is that the emails that we always send you an email to say it's time to set up your Pickup Patrol account. And that email address is going to be pulled from PowerSchool. So in order for us to do that, we need to have your information updated in PowerSchool. So we're hopeful that that will, a lot of this backlog will be resolved by then. All right. And so we will go back to our live streaming. I will stop sharing. Perfect. So now I'm going to go into the questions, and I will show those questions as we get to them. So I'm going to start up here. Okay.
So as a group, we chose to save the questions. We were just going to share our basic information with you and then come back to the questions so we could answer them in mass.
So this question says, is it need-based or for all? I'm assuming that you're talking about breakfast and lunch. And that is actually for all through January. So that is a government decision, and it's universal for all children. If that wasn't the question, then feel free to pop another comment into that. Has ASAP program been canceled?
No, but it's not running yet. And there's a lot that needs to be figured out in order for it to happen. So we need to get school going first. We need to make sure that school is set and that we're in good shape. And then our hope would be that we would be able to offer some ASAP later on.
Is there any concern having all of the students enter the school in a limited 10-minute time span?
I think it's our expectation that it may take a little longer, especially as we start the year and acclimate to these new routines. Please know that if your child enters after 8:30, we won't be marking that child late if it's due to our arrival procedures just taking a little bit longer. We expect that to happen. So we're going to wait and see how it goes and be ready to adjust and pivot in response to our school start.
And in addition to that, most of our buildings have multiple entrances and multiple routes for children, depending on whether they're coming by bus or by car or walkers, and what door they enter, so that we're not having lots of kids clustering at the same time. And because for at least at Memorial, we have a rolling drop off, so there won't be masses of kids entering the building within the same minute. It will be staggered. So that will protect us with the social distancing that needs to happen. And there'll be adults in the building to help support kids traveling through the building to their classrooms.
And I think just to add to that, there's going to be like building specific routines that will be altered when it comes to drop off and pick up. And that's information that's going to come out to you from your building principal specifically. So it would be more tailored just to like, for me, it would be my Benham audience. I'll share with you exactly what that's going to look like. And all my colleagues will do the same for their schools.
Great. Lindsay, thank you. Yep, that was about breakfast and lunch. Okay. Is it official that there will be no ASAP? We answered that. will drop off be similar? For example, curbside, and every school has their procedures, which can be found actually in the handbooks that are in our weekly newsletter. And we'll continue to send additional information to clarify what that looks like. How will we know if our kids will be on the bus if we requested it? So as long as you signed up for busing, it is anticipated that they will have busing, and they are currently working on those bus routes, and that information will then be shared out back to you. So you will hear something soon.
And that will come from the transportation department. It will come from Patty Payne, who manages our transportation.
Yeah, so that information, this is the same question, so great. Are there going to be demonstrations to help kids in kindergarten refill water bottles with the water fountains? Absolutely, 100%. It's one of the things that we typically do anyway, because they really like to play with the water fountain and overfill their bottles. So it's definitely something that we practice with all of our kiddos. My kids are asking me what will happen if they need to take their mask off if it isn't during a mask-free time. Again, we get it. We're educators. Our priority is our kids feeling safe and comfortable. So if they need a mask break, our teachers will be talking with kids in the first few days of school about, if you need to take a mask break, come talk to me. We'll make it happen. We will work with, our priority is that the kids feel safe and comfortable, because without that, they're not able to learn.
The other thing that I would just like to mention here is that the way that we've set up and managed our classrooms, we've done it at like we've accounted and taken into account all of the parameters that have been put into play and then added onto that. So we are 6 feet apart. We're facing one direction. Kids are masked, and we have plexi. So we've exceeded what the expectations have been from the Board of Health, from Mass Department of Health, and like the CDC guidelines. So if we're in a predicament where a 5-year-old acts like a 5-year-old and takes off their mask and ruffles their face and then puts their mask back on, we're safe. We're still safe in that situation, and not creating a vulnerability for anybody within that cohort. So we've been thoughtful in thinking that through.
So when kids are at recess, will they be wearing masks?
No.
Nope.
The plan is no. We still have a couple of questions that we have to work out here, because playground equipment can be open. So we have to figure out how that will be balanced. Recess will be broken out into zones. So the zones are spaces where kids can play and be able to engage in games with each other. And if we are able to ensure that they're 6 feet apart and that they're not going to have close contact for any period of time, then the masks come off. And so we're trying to create and manufacture opportunities for them to do that. For kids that want to be more sedentary and might want to be maybe a little bit closer and maybe color draw or something like that, if they're sitting in closer proximity, then they might keep their masks on during that time. But that's something that we're all going to kind of play around with, just like maybe do a simulation and then make sure that we make the best choices for kids and staff to be safe.
I can add to that, Karen.
Right.
I know that most of our principals have looked at our spaces around our building. And now you might say this is kind of a funny comment coming from Brown, because there's a construction project going on outside of our front doors. But we actually have been able to identify more locations where students are going to be able to be outside. So typically, we don't use our back courtyard outside of our 3rd grade. This year, we'll be using our back courtyard outside of our 3rd grade. So we've identified more spaces. And what that does is it allows us to have more kids outside during these recess times, but more space to do it. So typically classes are going to be kind of on their own, whereas in previous years, you'd have like the entire 3rd grade out at a time all together. This year, it's not going to look like that. So you'll have classes in different areas, and you might see some classes clustered, but not in the same numbers that we had previously.
All right. So for kids going to Tobin or other after-school programs, will they take their lunch to that school? So if they're going to a program where they need to bring a lunch with them, then yes, you would pack a lunch for them, or they could order a lunch at school and it would go into their backpack to take with them to that program. Is there going to be a list of supplies students need? If so, when will we get that? Funny, you should ask that question. Yes, there will be a list of supplies. They are recommended supplies for you to have for their at-home learning time. Any supplies that they need at school, we will provide for them, and they will be individualized for that child, and they will be kept at their spot for the week. But we will send you a supply list. Tomorrow at 5 o'clock, you should actually receive an email that will tell you who your child's teacher will be, what cohort they will be in, whether it's A week or B week, what their start day is, whether it's if they're in B week, they're coming on the 14th for 2 hours in the morning so that they can get familiarized with the building and have a better understanding of what will be expected of them when in school, but also what's expected of them for those first 3 days of learning that week when they'll be at home. And that will also give you a list of those supplies that we're recommending. We also recognize that because art is something that will be remote, they'll be attending that from home. Our art teachers are putting together at-home kits that will have the materials that they would typically be able to access in the art room.
And
So
just
tomorrow at 5, you can get that. Sorry, Jordan.
Yeah. Just to add to that, if there are any families who have a difficult time providing that at-home supply list, we do have our Natick Service Council who has graciously supported this for us, and they will be putting together supply kits for any family that may need that. And you can reach out to our guidance counselors at each of the schools, and that information would remain confidential, of course.
Great. Do they need to bring their own hand sanitizer? Sorry. Or will it be provided? Nope, we'll be providing it. We will have plenty of hand sanitizer. We'll have it in every classroom. We have hand sanitizing stations all over the buildings. So there is no need for you to send your own. Right. How do you pay for lunches? Will there be an orientation for kindergarten students that have not done this before? Karen, you're muted. Oh, go ahead.
I have kids playing outside my office window, so I just have to close the window. Breakfast and lunch is free through till January. It's just a federal grant, so we don't have to worry about that, Justin. We'll make sure that they get their lunches and they can take it home.
And in terms of, and then once we get to January, if that federal grant ends, there is an account through My School Bucks, and you can find a link to that on our website, and you can just add money to it, or you can send in a check, and we will add it to the account for you. And then in terms of an orientation, we have hosted some orientation type stuff for parents, so we did that in the spring, but we also have some upcoming things happening for kindergarten students and actually for all students to help orient them to their new school or to their new grade, to their new teacher. So that will be upcoming in the next couple of weeks. School supplies, we answered that. Are they touchless bathroom faucets? Who wants to take that one?
Not yet. They're coming. They're on back order because everybody in the whole country wants touchless water faucets. And so we ordered them, and they are due in this fall. And as soon as they come in, we will replace them. But we have a system in place where our students are going to be taught like when they go to the bathrooms, they're going to be taught a protocol where they sanitize their hands before they leave the classroom. They go use the facilities, come out, wash their hands, soap and water, which is the best cleaning agent that we can use in order to make our hands safe and healthy. Dry their hands, go back, and then they sanitize before they re-enter the classroom. And that's just so that we have a clear system when we travel outside of the room, that when we enter the room, we are clean and can feel confident about our spaces.
Dr. Nolan mentioned lunches and snacks are available for all students. So that was actually an erroneous email. It meant to say breakfast and lunches. Snacks will not be provided. So you will need to provide snacks for your child. If a family can't afford and it's a hardship, then we will support you in that. Our PTOs and our building principals are all willing to support that. And in terms of what is offered for breakfast and lunch, it will mostly be handheld items that the student can, it's not going to be cereal where we're pouring milk and kind of making a mess. It'll be just something that they can pick up and eat. Are you assuring that the required hand sanitizer is not? Yes, it is not on the FDA warning list. Everything that we purchase is approved by the FDA, by the CDC, by our school nurses check everything. So everything is safe. We would not bring something in that is harmful to any of our kiddos. And for the year, does this mean that there's no intention to move to full school even if case numbers drop to even lower levels? Aiden, I think that's referring to when you mentioned that they'd be in that same desk for the year. Mm-hmm. But we don't know what's going to happen. And so we can only go with what we know right now. So anything could change at any minute. We don't know what's going to happen. We're preparing for every scenario. Do we need to order or get Chromebooks for kindergarten grade, or will it be provided?
So we will need all families to have a device for their child at home to use, especially on their remote learning weeks when they're not physically in the building. If a family cannot have a device for their child at home, then the district is able to provide devices. So there is an option to reach out to our tech department, and I believe that's in all of our newsletters on how to do that if you need to request a device.
Right. In order to have water while in class, do they need a long straw, or are they able to kind of slip it under the mask? That goes, a straw obviously is the ideal, but not every water bottle out there has a straw. And we're not saying you have to go out and buy something special because we do have that quadruple protection of desks facing the same way, 6 feet apart, plexiglass and masks. Kids are overly protected. So if a kid needs to pull their mask down to take a sip of water from their water bottle, that's fine.
And remember that happens in a quick time frame, right? So in order to contaminate a space, it really is 15 minutes of close contact between people. So to remove your mask, take a drink, and put your mask back up, you're safe to do that.
What is the plan for social distancing during snack time? Are the designated areas large enough to have appropriate distancing? Yes, absolutely. We wouldn't do it if it wasn't, but we'll be going out in cohorts. And so not every kid in the building will be going outside at the same time. So we're able to manage that with appropriate spacing.
At the elementary level, we're also using just very familiar tools and strategies like hula hoops and pool noodles to help kids understand their space within the group and then the space overall. And I know, I bet a lot of teachers are going to be reaching out, asking parents to send in beach towels, because beach towels are kind of a natural definer of a space if kids are going to sit down outside and we space out that way. So lots of visuals.
Next question, what will breaks look like in inclement weather, rain, temperatures below 20 degrees?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to try and take our students out as often as possible. So if it's raining a little bit, we're going to encourage students to bring their rain jackets and bring warm clothes so that we can still go outside. Obviously, if it's downpouring and thunder and lightning and it's freezing cold, then no, that wouldn't be appropriate. But we don't get too many days like that. But when we do, it is possible to have a mask break in a classroom when students are 6 feet apart. And like we said earlier, we're implementing more safety precautions in the classroom than the Board of Health is recommending. So the Board of Health is saying 6 feet apart with masks on. and we're doing 6 feet apart, masks, same direction, and plexiglass. So the fact that your students are 6 feet apart, they can take their mask down because of the plexiglass, because they're facing the same direction, and there are enough precautions for them to be able to do that if we open the classroom door, have some ventilation, open a window, but we're going to do everything we can to get them outside.
All right. How close will kids be to each other during mass breaks? So they'll be at least 6 feet apart from each other.
Right.
Will the windows to the classroom be open at all times as it is written in the handbook?
That is the plan, to have classroom windows open, classroom doorways open, so that there is that flow. We've also updated our Univent system, our HVAC systems, so that they're at a MERV 13. So if you've been checking in to Dr. Nolan's school committee meetings, MERV 13 is one of the highest grades you can get for an institutional setting, barring hospital zones. So that increases the amount of filtration within our classroom. And we've also increased the amount of flow through those Univent systems so that there's more air moving in and out of the classrooms.
So that actually answers this next question about the air ventilation systems. Could the pictures of the classrooms be sent home so we can show our students? Also, is the thought that students will not work in groups ever, like small reading groups, et cetera, due to social distancing? Who wants to take that one? Aiden?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. The first part, two different things here. Yes, we can share out this PowerPoint presentation. After this, I think we're planning to share out the recording and the PowerPoint presentation. So we'll make sure we get that out to you. And the thought with small group work is that if we want to pull students close together, if we incorporate the plexiglass and the masks in a way where we have 2 or 3 desks come together near the teacher for a short period of time for a small group. We talked about that with Dr. Nolan. My understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, principals, is that that would be acceptable for a short period of time if there's a panel of plexiglass next to the student. And so you have that mask barrier, but you also have that plexiglass barrier between one student and the next student. So you would still have enough protection there for that to be acceptable for small groups for a short period of time.
All right. So next question. For the student assessments that typically happen over summer, how will those take place, or has the plan changed specific for kindergarten?
So
Go ahead, Karen.
I'm thinking that probably is referring to our kindergarten screenings that would have happened in the spring, right? And so our typical guideline is to make sure that we have all of that information done by October 31st for the Department of Education. I'm not sure if that date has shifted. And that's something that we as a district need to plan to help onboard our kindergartners and then also meet our state requirements for school readiness for kids. So we'll communicate more about that once we have that guidance from the Department of Ed. But we will also be doing our own thing in terms of seeing where kids are at, what they know, what they can and cannot do, so that we can target how we're meeting their needs through our daily work with them.
All right. Can you describe what the day will look like during weeks at home? Will they have instruction between the hours of 8 to 1? So yes, a typical day will begin around 8:30, 8:40. That will be communicated by your child's classroom teacher. Our day will start with a community meeting so that our students who are live in front of us, as well as the students who are in the at-home learning week who have the same teacher, will all develop a community together. So there will be a community meeting where some students will be virtual, some students will be live in person. Every student at home will have 2 specials per day. They're 40 minutes each, and that schedule will be published out to you so you're aware of when they need to log in for either art, music, library, or PE. And then the remainder of the time, they will have work that is assigned to them. Some of it will be work that they can do on paper. Some of it will be activities that have been provided to them, and some of it will be online work that's assigned by their classroom teacher. Yeah, so you wrote to the support address a week ago and still haven't heard. Like I said, they are very, very backlogged, so they will get to you. I spoke with another parent who had been several weeks, so they are working as fast as they possibly can. It's unfortunate that this transition was already in play and happening when COVID hit, and so now we have compounded factors that are impacting how quickly we can get all of this done. So be patient. We appreciate it. That's also one of the reasons why we decided not to hold off on having you access your classroom teacher's name through PowerSchool, and we're publishing it out to you tomorrow. Every parent should make an account on PowerSchool or just one guardian per kid. It's best if both guardians can have access to it and have an account. My recommendation, though, would be to make sure that you're working collaboratively and making sure that that documentation is filled out properly and that the proper guardians, especially if it's a split family home, meaning mom's in one home and dad's in another home, or however your situation might be, that you're all in agreement on who those guardians are and who can release and dismiss your child. Anyone want to add to that?
I think I read that a little bit differently, so I'll just put my twist on it. Like, you only need one account per child, though. If you have a shared login with the people in your house and you have a family login, that's completely fine. Just make sure that all of your information for the people that are involved in your child's, that have access to your child, could release them or have access to their information, are included in the way that you build out your content in PowerSchool.
All right. So given that the kids are starting school midweek and the weeks that holidays fall is the week of 10/26, the first week that cohort A will be in school all 5 days. Yeah.
I don't know.
I know, without having a calendar in front of me, I'm not able to answer that specifically. But yes, there are weeks that holidays fall, and we aren't going to switch up our cohort schedule to accommodate those holidays. I think that could be a logistical nightmare for families if we tried to maneuver around the holidays in that way. But we are having our students who are in cohort B start back on September 14th for just a 2-hour orientation morning at school, so they can start to learn the routines, see how things look different, and be set up for success for their first remote learning week, which will start on September 16th. And those students who are in cohort A will begin on September 16th for what we're considering a full day, 8:30 to 1:30.
All right. Will parents and students of kindergartners get a chance to tour the school beforehand to help new kindergartners get used to the new space? So what we are going to do, especially for kindergarten, is that the classroom teachers are going to put together some opportunities for your child to get to know them. There will also be some virtual tours that show you where do you enter, what does it look like, what does a classroom look like. So it will be virtual and not live. And a lot of that has to do with the idea of not contaminating the space with lots of people walking through it, so that it is safe for your children when it's time for them to come in. But we will be providing them with some virtual opportunities to see it. What are the hours for early release days?
That is a great question that I haven't gotten a good answer from our central office yet. So as soon as I know, I will share. As soon as we know, we will share it. But I have not gotten feedback yet on that.
All right. What kind of ventilation measures are being planned? So we did talk about that. Mask break safety. I'm not sure what that's asking.
I think if you scroll down, Sue, there's another question that
relates to that. All right. What is the safety protocol for little kids during mask break? So they will be at least 6 feet apart. There will be a grown-up monitoring them to make sure that they stay in their safe space. Is there a place in PowerSchool to update health forms? I believe that health forms are typically sent in to the nurse and not just updated in PowerSchool. But Jody, I will get that information and get back to you. All right. How do we know who is in cohort A and cohort B? So when you get your letter tomorrow, it will indicate to you whether you are in cohort A or cohort B. For the most part, we really tried to stick to the alpha split. And if that wasn't the case, then we communicated that directly with you. And in some cases, our cohorts were just too large on certain ends of the alphabet, so we had to make some adjustments. And for students who are coming to school full-time due to special education services or because they are children of teachers, their cohort may have been switched.
I'll also add that when we made some adjustments, we made sure that families who have students in multiple grades, we didn't make a switch so that, you know, a student in first grade might come on cohort A, but if you have another child in, you know, seventh grade, we wouldn't set them up to be in cohort B. So you would be in the same cohort for your entire family. So we were careful about that.
Kindergarten seating arrangements look very similar to that, to what you saw. And many of our kindergarten teachers, when they reach out to you directly, they will be sending you class videos, pictures of their classroom so that your child can become familiar with it.
I will just add, Sue, it might be a little bit different across the district in terms of kindergarten classrooms. I know that some teachers were planning on reaching out with a little bit versions that are a little bit different.
And if I go back to that for a second, within the slide deck that we'll share in our newsletters tomorrow, there are some great resources on like social stories to use with children around masks and how to use masks and what a break looks like and how to support these shifts in our daily school experience. So we're sending out some resources that we'll be using with children, but you can also start to use with your learners too.
Karen, I'm glad you mentioned that newsletter again, because I think it's important to share with families that in the past, we used to send out a newsletter, a weekly blast every week from each individual school, and parents who have multiple children in multiple schools were finding that they were just inundated with emails that had a lot of the same information in it. So we now do a weekly it's called the NPS Engage. It is a weekly newsletter that Dr. Nolan sends out. And at the bottom, there is a link to each individual school where we then update our important information. So you're going to want to keep your eye out for that. It comes out on Fridays. It's called NPS Engage, and you'll read Dr. Nolan's message to you and any resources that she's providing. And then you'll scroll down and each individual school will have it. And in addition to that, we have a link to our weekly newsletter on our website. Each individual school's website has a link to their newsletter. So this question continues from the safety for protocol. So again, we're going to work with your child. We understand that this is a learning curve. So we're going to work in a very kind way to support them in adjusting to the requirements of wearing a mask every day, how to take a mask break. So we'll do a lot of education around that with them. How do we know if we're on the list to get a Chromebook? So if you requested one either through Speak Up Natick or through our parent support, which is different from PS support, parent support at natickps.org, that is our technology help desk, and you can request a Chromebook through that. We did talk about ASAP already. How do we update new people picking up students on PowerSchool?
So would that be a pickup patrol?
No, I think in PowerSchool, there is an opportunity for you to update emergency contact information. And if you want to add someone to your pickup, you would add them as an emergency contact in our school, and it's on the student information page. And if you need help with that, you can contact the front office of your child's school, and they can tell you exactly which form it is. Are remote specials mandatory? Yes, they are. We will be taking attendance at all of them. Is there an
I'm going to go back to the specials for a little bit. Last year, when we were remote, our specialists had entire grade levels at the same time. It's going to be different this year. So the classes are going to be taught remotely, but they're going to be live. And it will be a smaller cohort of students that will be engaging in each of the classes. So it's going to look and feel a little different.
We talked about ASAP. What's the process when kids are homesick, non-COVID, but need to be home for the longer period? How to merge with remote weeks?
Well, in a way, unlike ever before, I feel like students have access to school even if they're not feeling well when they're home, which is kind of nice. So if they're homesick and they want to, and they're not well enough to be in school, and we do want you to keep them home, even if it's questionable, then they can still tune into their community meeting in the morning with their teacher and maybe engage in some of the remote learning work that they might typically do on a remote week. They could engage in that until they're well enough to return to the brick and mortar building.
Right. What is happening at Johnson? Can you please help us understand what that looks like for kindergartners?
I'm not sure what is meant by what is happening at Johnson. I don't know if this was in response to something else we may have shared, but Justin, if you don't mind clarifying your question, or I can give you a call if you want to talk that through. But our kindergarten orientation practices will look very similar to those at the other 4 buildings. You'll be hearing from teachers probably next week.
It probably has to do with the pickup that I messed up earlier in the presentation, Jordan. So,
oh, yes.
So clarity of what dismissal looks like at Johnson for child care planning.
Yeah, so now that makes a lot more sense now. Thank you. So as you know, in previous years at Johnson, so many of our students walk to school. In fact, 90% of our students do not ride the bus. So dismissal is usually in a way that we escort kids out of the building and they connect with a grown-up, and that will continue in the same way. So we do not have live pickup in the way that the other buildings have. Cars drive up and kids are then escorted maybe to a specific car. So it does look a little bit different at Johnson, mostly because of our neighborhood.
Great, thank you. I just lost my spot, so I apologize. Lots of questions here. I don't want to miss anybody, so I apologize for the delay.
I think classroom teachers are going to be sharing out cohort information, like who else is in the class. Is that correct? Is that your understanding as well?
Repeat that, sorry.
So I think some families are wondering who else is in my child's cohort for childcare purposes maybe. And I think classroom teachers are going to share that information when they reach out to their families probably in the next week or so.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What is the plan to help kindergarten kids settle in and learn in this model, since it's typically play learning? There will still be some play happening. They just won't be right next to each other when they do that. But our kindergarten teachers are very creative in how they put things together to help our kiddos still continue to play.
And I think also, especially since the spring, I feel like our kindergarten teachers from all 5 schools are collaborating now in a way that I don't think existed prior to COVID. They're sharing best practices, sharing ideas, so that creativity is really spreading across the district. And the ideas I've already heard brought up are impressive. So I feel like they're going to create an experience for kindergarten in our first graders, youngest learners, where they are still playing quite a bit. It's just going to look a little different than it has in previous years.
All right. When will we know which cohort our kids belong in? So you will find out tomorrow at 5 o'clock. You'll receive an email. How will you manage when kids cluster together on school grounds but not in classrooms? Will stickers and arrows really help?
Unfortunately, we can't. I mean, if they're on school grounds and it's during school hours, there will always be grown-ups around to redirect children if they start to get too close to one another. Unfortunately, we can't control what happens off school grounds, but I think collectively we need to hold hands on this one, although we can't really get close to one another, and just commit to that social distancing. I mean, I think we can all agree that we want kids in school as much as they can be, and that's going to take a community effort to adhere to social distancing and to wear masks. And the healthier we can keep our community, then the more likely we'll be able to be in school.
Sorry, my computer is spinning, but the next question is, will there be orientation prior to school start for kids to meet their classmates?
I don't think there's anything specific planned that's consistent across all grade levels. So I'm not sure if there will be any kind of like a step-up day. Karen, I don't know if you have more updated information on that.
Yeah, no, I think teachers are going to plan ways to bring kids together so that all of the students within their classes will get to know each other. It may happen that first week of school. It may happen a little bit earlier than that. It's going to come from your classroom teacher, and they're going to let you know when to tune in and what's happening.
All right. Is there any specific requirement on types of mask?
Yes. So no gaiters, no bandanas, no vented masks. A 2-ply mask is really the best to use. That's what's been deemed most safe. And great analogy that masks are like underwear. You wear them one day and then you're done with them. They get washed and then you wear one again, right? Then you can wear it again. So that's the guidance that we've been given. That's the guidance that we're going to share with you or to you too, that those 2-ply masks, 2-ply cloth masks are the best. And we will always have masks on campus to help and support too if there's a problem.
The next question is, what is the procedure for online students if and when the vaccine will be available?
I think we have to wait for that to happen. We don't have a protocol for that yet.
We do know that wouldn't happen overnight. It would take some time to get that out. So in that time, I think we would have a conversation with obviously the superintendent and make plans that are appropriate at that time.
Can anyone else see in the broadcast studio? Can any of you see the questions?
I can see the questions. I'm just not sure which one we left off on.
Okay, because I'm frozen and my computer will not move. So I'm down at the time. The questions I'm looking at are from 3:22 p.m.
All right, I'll scroll there now.
I'm going to get there.
My computer is completely frozen.
All right, so I'm gonna start with some questions. So I'm going to how will you manage hand washing, soap and water after using hand sanitizer 3 times? It looks like outline suggests more than 3 hand sanitizers prior to soap and water washing. So I'm not exactly sure which protocol that is, but I know that what we're asking our students to do, and our staff too, for that matter, is that before you leave your classroom, that you're going to sanitize your hands, and that if you're leaving to go to the restroom or I don't know where else you'd be going, like to sanitize before you leave your classroom, to go to the place where you're going. If there's options to wash your hands at that space with soap and water, do it. And then before you re-enter your classroom, you sanitize again, so that just as you move between a space, your hands are clean and that you're going in safely.
Karen, there's a question here about switching from hybrid to remote and remote back to hybrid. And we've asked for families to commit to the semester. And the reason for that is because we have staffed both our remote learning academy as well as our 5 buildings in response to the models that families have chosen. So if we have families switching back and forth, I'm not sure that we would have the staff to be able to respond to that. If there are extenuating circumstances, then I would urge you to reach out to your building principal and discuss that. But for the most part, we are asking that families commit to that full semester.
There's also another question here about medication drop-off with the nurses, which I'm sure lots of folks are probably wondering about. And my understanding is that in the nurses section on our newsletters, I believe that there's information about drop-off. I believe it has to be scheduled. So that newsletter is going to come out tomorrow around 5 o'clock. So please keep an eye out for that information.
I'm seeing one here about students of educators, and if you're able to provide documentation that you're a public school educator, then we are making space for students of educators, and they will not be joining their classroom teacher that week on the remote week. Instead, they'll be supervised to be able to engage in their remote learning just from the school building and not from their home. So Dr. Nolan sent out a survey not that long ago asking for that information from families so that we could plan accordingly. So I don't know if we have space at this time in each of the buildings for any additional educators' children, but reach out if that's something you're wondering.
I also see a question here from Jennifer that if there are two children with different last names, can they be assigned to the same cohort? And so as building principals, we try to account for that, but I would recommend you contact your building, your schools, to make sure that that was accounted for. So double check on your end, and that's a commitment that we've made to keep families together. So.
And Karen, this was a bit related, just clarity. Rosemary asked for clarity around how the cohorts are broken up, A through L, A through K. So we planned on A through K and then L through Z. And again, like I think Aiden mentioned before, we did have some student-specific changes, but those have been communicated directly with families.
The next question I see, and it's the first one that I've come across with this so far, it's from Mike Bevel. How are symptoms handled? For example, my son has seasonal allergies. Will a COVID test be required if he's exhibiting symptoms, or does not just self-quarantine for a designated time period? So allergies happen, right? And if it's a pre-existing condition that you know and that you treat with your doctor, I would communicate with the clinics, with your nurses, and make sure that it's on file and that we have that information. And parents are going to be asked to do daily attestation assessments of their children to assess for temperatures, to assess for symptoms, just like we're going to ask all of our staff to do the same thing so that we can feel comfortable and confident when we come into school. And that I would recommend you work really closely with the school nurse and with the clinics, because we'll be capturing that information and then managing it accordingly. Does that make sense? Anything to add? Okay. The next question I see is student estimate and classroom for teacher cohorts. Well, I would say selfishly, the upside for these cohorts is that it's at max a 12-to-1 ratio, 12 students to 1 teacher, but oftentimes the cohorts could be anywhere from 8 to 12. So you're going to have small groups each week that will be working exclusively with the classroom teachers.
I've completely lost my place on the questions.
I'm still around the 319.
Oh, you are? Okay, I jumped ahead on you. Sorry.
Yeah, but I'm way up at 324. There's one about phys ed classes and how those are going to happen. I'm assuming they're asking because there might be a question of is that live or is that online? All of our specials are going to be done virtually during the remote week. So for physical education, students are going to have the opportunity to participate in physical education, but it's going to be done virtually, and it's going to be during the remote week.
Mm-hmm. There's another great question here about the first day of school drop-off. Like, you know how it's kind of that Norman Rockwell moment when everybody gathers around and you hold your child's hand and then their teachers come out, you give them a hug and a kiss and you send them off. Well, it's going to be different this year, right? Because we're not going to cluster around and we're not going to have everybody hanging out the way that we normally would. We are planning to send you some orientation materials so that you are aware of what it looks like and what it feels like to do drop off. And we're going to ask you to really help us with this because we're going to follow our regular daily protocols and not really switch it up. Barring there'll be something a little bit different for kindergarten, and we'll communicate what that is directly with our own schools and what drop off should look like for our K students. But to be prepared for a live drop off, and that we'll have a plethora of grown-ups out there to make sure kids get where they need to be and are able to start their day.
Karen, I see a few questions here around supplies, both at home and in school. Students will not be sharing supplies in school. Every student will have their own pair of scissors, their own little box of crayons. We bought a lot of individual packs of things this year in preparation for the return to school. So at school, they'll have their own learning kit. And then when they return home, we are sending out tomorrow night at 5 a list of supplies that are recommended for at-home learning. And again, if you don't have the means to get them, our Natick Service Council has been wonderful in supporting us, and just let us know and we'll make sure that your child has what they need at home. We are recommending though that they have a designated workspace at home so that home feels like school when they're not physically here in our building. So I hope that answers the couple of questions I saw there.
Yeah. And also for walkers, right? There are walkers that live close enough that you don't need to drive a car to pick them up. And that's strongly recommended. Bike riders, walkers, glad to have you do that. What we need to know from you though, is if you have a learner that is going to be walking home and you want to give us permission to dismiss them, like dismiss that student like a 3rd or 4th grader, then we need that in writing from you as parents. Is that good with everybody on our team? Like that's the rule. If you tell us that your 3rd or 4th grader can walk home without a grown-up to meet them, we need that in writing from you, and then we'll make sure that that's part of their dismissal plan. Same with bikers. Like you need to let us know if your student's going to ride their bike to school. Yes, I think that's it.
The indoor gym will not be open. We are repurposing our gym spaces to accommodate the need to spread some kids out, especially on our weeks when some of our special education students will be here both weeks. Then we're finding a different place that we can ensure that they're learning. So PE is going to be taught virtually. So most cases it won't be done from the gym. I'm not sure if that's true of all buildings though. We don't have an earliest date that ASAP would be offered. We just don't know yet. I think we're all kind of crossing our fingers that we'll be able to figure this out for families. We know it's a real need, but we're really focused right now on getting kids back into school. And I know at the district level, they're thinking about ASAP, but we haven't heard anything yet.
There is a specific question here, Aiden, that I hope you can answer regarding Brown and bikers. Do you have bike racks for kids if they ride their bike to school? Is that something they can do during your construction?
I believe so. I think they're still out there. I have a couple of parents who just recently emailed and asked about the location. I have to go out and check where they are. They may have shifted due to the construction, but I think they're still there, and I'm going to check.
Okay, great.
I can put that information in an upcoming newsletter.
Great, thanks.
Someone's asking about if classes will still have shared cubbies and coat hangers. So I think at each of our schools that kids will still be able to keep their belongings in a cubby. Teachers are going to be responsible for staggering how kids approach their cubbies and ensuring that the social distancing is still in place, and they'll be spread out to the degree we're able to. But we won't allow kids to get within 6 feet when getting something from their cubby or possibly off their coat hook.
There's a question here about two questions. One, the first one is recess and distancing at recess. And so we've been working diligently to come up with plans and games. We've zoned out all of our spaces outdoors so that a cohort will be assigned to a specific location. So there's no crossing over. Typically, you would have had a whole grade level out there and kids just running and playing. Now you're going to have your students' class meet in a particular zone and have the opportunity to play there. And so the games that they'll be playing might look and feel a little bit different. Games like maybe a modified ultimate frisbee, or we have a whole host of pool noodles coming and noodle tag, right? Because every student can have their own noodle, and that gives you some space. And there's some pretty clever and creative people around our campuses that have come up with some great ideas. So I think your students are probably going to be coming home knowing about new games to play and having opportunities to try lots of different things. We might even allow them, we went through a thing at Benham where we kind of shut down the bottle flip game because it was happening during lunch and it became very distracting and hard. And a lot of kids weren't eating their lunches. Well, maybe that's a new recess game if kids are still into doing things like that and setting up competition. We've really been thoughtful in thinking about different alternatives for kids to engage with each other in a safe way with space and distance. And then the other question that I saw here is for children that are going to be here full time because their grown-ups are teachers too, right? So for their week that they're included in their classroom, they'll have a cohort just like everybody else in a hybrid model. And then on the alternate week, they actually have a second cohort. And that cohort will be probably a band of like a couple of grade level bands, and they will have staff with them to help them with their remote work and then also offer them their recess breaks, their snack breaks, and facilitate their day. So they won't be pushed into the classroom, into both of those cohort, into the general education classroom both weeks. They go in for the week that they would go if they were just a typical hybrid kid. And then the second week, they have a second cohort of other students that are part of whose parents are teachers too. Excuse me.
Someone is mentioning that the 1:30 lunch is awfully late, and we couldn't agree more, which is why we've put in place 2 snack times during the day. So we encourage you to send your child with 2 hearty, healthy snacks. We've spaced them out so that they can be nourished throughout the day, and hopefully they don't go home with bellies that are too hungry. But that is on our mind as well, and hopefully we can partner to see how that goes. And if we need to send in bigger snacks, we will.
Welcome back, Ms. Balboni. We missed you.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, sorry you had to endure that. So a quick point to make just about contact tracing and communication if there is a reason for us to get in touch with you, right? All of our nurses worked for the Board of Health during closure and became very well versed in how to do contact tracing and how to communicate and all of the CDC guidelines. If there is potential contamination within a cohort, the school nurses will be in touch with you and will communicate the protocol for you. They are not going to disclose individuals' names. We all have a right to own our stuff, right? And to have some privacy there. But if there is a threat or an exposure, that will be communicated, and we will it will be communicated in a timely manner.
Sue, if it's helpful, I think we're all kind of jumping around a bit. I know I'm around the 3:20 mark. I see a question here just on, is there more information available regarding a typical hybrid schedule and components beyond start and end times? All of our school handbooks include a sample schedule, just with a little more information on what a typical day might look like, with the knowledge that that's going to look a little bit different across grade levels. That some of those mass breaks for different, age levels or learners might naturally happen earlier or later, but you can see just a typical schedule, a sample schedule in all handbooks.
Seeing there's a question about if there will be a session like this for students who have IEPs. I know that our elementary special education coordinators at each of the 5 buildings are working on communicating home with families. I actually just shot that question over to ours today to find out when that would happen. I have not heard back yet. So I know that they are planning to communicate how the day may look different and what to expect as well.
There's a question here from Rachel regarding our planning for students returning to school after having the shutdown and some trauma, and how are we going to support their social emotional needs, right? We get that. That's going to be a big part of how we reintroduce them to school and how we can make sure that they feel safe in the community and that they know that they have trusted adults and resources that they can tap into. One part of our planning for this hybrid model is to make sure to build that community meeting into our daily structure so that there is a chance for our students to connect with each other, to connect to the adults that are involved with their classes, and then also know that they have resources available to them. So that's when we're going to really kind of zone in and see what kids need in order to be successful. And then as a staff, we all have teams that work together to plan to meet those needs for children. So that's going to be a big priority for all of us this year.
So I'm going to start working through some of the questions from the end up. There's a question about if a teacher has COVID, will there be a sub or how's that handled? Yeah, if a teacher is ill, regardless of what the illness is, we would have a sub, and our goal is to have subs that are cohorted with particular classes so that we don't have too many adults in and out of cohorts of children. There's a question about iPads versus laptop or Chromebook. Yes, you can use an iPad as well. It just depends on comfort level and ease of use for your child. There's some nice thank yous. If a public educator cannot come at 1:30 to pick up their children, does the school keep them? Well, we'll keep your child until you get here, but that's not our protocol. You do need to come or make arrangements for them to be picked up. But we also understand that on rare occasions, a situation might happen where you get behind a traffic jam or something, but we do need you to pick up your child on time. We don't have the adults here to be supervising them. So if it's going to be an issue, you might want to try to make other arrangements for your child. And I know that the Y has some openings and Tobin has some openings. What is the reason behind the shorter school day? Why can't they go full day? We've just found that the safety for our children around the day and eating lunch and meeting the required time on learning, we need to do the shortened day because we can't manage all 400 or 500 or 600 students through the school. And it gets even more challenging at the middle school and the high school level.
It really had to do with lunches and being able to feed so many children safely.
Lots of comments. Yep. Sorry about the Y being a great resource for families, both on your remote weeks as well as your live weeks. There's a question about masks being mandatory for K2, and it is mandatory. It is not optional. Our school committee has signed off on a policy around masks, and it is for all children, including our preschoolers. More comments about the Y. What symptoms will necessitate a test or quarantine if a child is called in sick? And that will be something that the nurse will discuss with you. No, COVID-19 tests are not required before the first day of school. It's just that attestation that you need to complete.
And just to share, Dr. Nolan has been in communication about some pool testing and options for parents. So she's going to be coming back to the community just to solicit interest in a randomized pool testing opportunity. But that will come in the next week or two from her.
There's a question about cohort A having fewer school days than cohort B in the fall. and can we modify that to make it more equitable? We're going to do everything that we can to ensure that their instruction is as well aligned and matched as possible. But we don't, as elementary principals, we don't make the school calendar or the school schedule. That comes from the school committee. So I can't answer that question beyond to tell you that we're going to try to align them as much as possible.
I can add to that though, Sue. I had this conversation with Mr. Downing, our assistant superintendent, who actually did map out the entire year, and it balances out the second half of the year if we still find ourselves in this hybrid scenario.
There's a question about protocol for switching a child between hybrid and Edgenuity, and how long does the process take? So as Jordan said earlier, we're really trying to limit the number of children who make that switch, because we have staffed all of our programs, whether it's the hybrid program or the remote program, based on the number of students were enrolled by your survey. And so it is a challenge to try to make that switch. So that would be something that you would want to speak with Jordan about individually if that situation arises, as she is the principal for the Remote Learning Academy. Jordan, did you want to add to that?
No, I'm just seeing another related question here in the thread, and it's just about when the fully remote students will learn about their teachers. And that's also tomorrow at 5 o'clock when those emails are sent home. For kids who are fully remote, they'll have an additional teacher added because they'll be part of the community meeting and also have their remote learning teacher as well.
So will there be a different teacher teaching on remote week? So the remote week, the live teachers are just for specials and for community meeting in the morning. The rest of it is independent work that's supervised by parents at home. Let's see. When will kids be having breakfast provided by the school? So that is for children. If your child needs breakfast, when they enter the school building, they will go to a location that we have designated in each building to obtain that breakfast. That said, it does then cut into their time for morning meetings. So, you know, if it's not something that's necessary, I would recommend that you have them have breakfast at home. But again, it is there if they need it. Can kids still borrow books from the school library? They will be able to. There won't be browsing, but they will be able to look on the online catalog, and our librarians will then take the book that they've checked out, check it out to them, bag it up, and deliver it to their classroom. When books are returned, they are then quarantined for 4 days before they are reshelved. How will the buses be dismissed and bus seating? So kids will be on the bus, every other seat, every other row, so that they're not sitting one behind the other. They will be one to a seat unless they're siblings, then we can have them sit together. Dismissal, every school will have their own system on how it's dismissed, but the goal is to not have all kids dismissing at the same time to buses. So I know for Memorial, we'll be calling each bus as it arrives and loading the kids that way.
And I'll add to that, Sue. I know in the past at a lot of the schools, we had parents gather on the sidewalk out front, and students would come out and stand outside and wait for their family's car to show up. We won't be doing that. In a lot of our buildings, it's going to be, what did you call it? A live drop off and pick up, Karen?
Yeah.
So cars are going to come up and students are going to be dismissed from the building, but they're not going to be waiting outside on our sidewalk, and we're not going to be having parents park and then congregate on the sidewalk. And obviously that's for social distancing reasons. So it's going to look a little bit different, but each of our handbooks will describe what that process is going to look like.
Yep. There's a question about lunch being available. So they can order lunch first thing in the morning, and it will be delivered to their classroom to put in their backpack and take home with them. on remote weeks, will they still be engaged by their classroom teacher? That will be during community meeting time. And then they will have live engagement with their specialist teachers.
I see a question here that I think we might have skipped over on common spaces like bathrooms and how how they'll be taken care of. And the question said specifically after each use. So our custodians actually have an updated and pretty robust protocol that they will be following moving forward, but they will not be cleaned after each individual use. There will be times throughout the morning where each bathroom is wiped down and sanitized throughout the day, and that's all the bathrooms throughout the building. So there's going to be a rotation and a schedule where the custodians will do that.
Yeah. There is a question here about Power School. Like we said, there is quite a backup in the Power School help desk, so please just be patient. Can public school teachers in other districts have their children come to Natick both weeks? Did you already answer that? I thought I might have popped in when I heard Jordan mentioning that.
Yes, we have.
So as part of the survey that was sent out by Dr. Nolan earlier this month, where you were asked to select your model, whether you were hybrid or remote, there was also a space there where if you are a public school teacher and you wanted to send your children to the school both weeks, that you would have answered it there. So that's where we harvested our data. So if you did not answer that and you have a child, if you are a public school teacher and you have a child that you want for us to consider for full time, then you need to get in touch with your building. I think your building-based principal, and then we can make a plan with you.
There's a question about a student is out sick, non-COVID. How do they, and it's one of their on-campus weeks, how do they receive remote learning? If a child is sick, it's considered a sick day, and they would not be accessing the remote learning because the remote learning may not align with what they're supposed to be doing in the classroom. So you would just take it as a sick day and have them rest and get well. Right. The hours for cohort B on September 14th, that will be in the letter you get tomorrow, but it's 8:30 to 10:30. I'm not seeing any other new or unanswered questions. Is anybody else?
No, and I'm just seeing that we have to wrap up because it's almost 4:30 and we don't have StreamYard beyond that.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
So we will thank you all so much for joining us. And if we didn't answer a question that is pressing on your mind, feel free to reach out to one of us and send us an email. And this recording, as well as the slide deck, will all be in the newsletter that goes out tomorrow afternoon. So,
thank you, everyone.
Thanks for coming, everybody.
Appreciate your time
Thank you,
tonight.
everyone.